Are your wildlife photos actually sharp? One of the questions I get on a regular basis is how can you tell if a photo really and truly is sharp? What should you look for in the image? Steve from Backcountry Gallery here, and this time around, I'll show you 5 things to look for in a wildlife photo to verify that it is indeed sharp. And I'm saving the best ones for last. Before we begin, keep in mind that for wildlife work, I'm always looking in the vicinity of the eye for critical focus at 100 or 200% magnification, 100% for normal resolution monitors, and I go to 200% for 4K and higher resolution monitors. And finally, keep in mind with the points that follow, I'm using somewhat ideal examples for the purpose of illustration. These images are mostly at close range under good conditions. If you're facing a more distant subject or using a lower resolution camera, you'll still see these same signs of a sharp image, only they'll be more subtle. Also, keep in mind that not all of the points apply to every subject. If your photo passes 1 or 2, it's probably okay. Oh, and this advice assumes default sharpening has been applied from your raw processing program. Number 1, verify fur and feather detail. Check out the fur, eyelash, and feather detail. Ideally, you want the detail sharply defined enough that you can easily spot individual strands of fur or individual barbs on the feathers, at least around the area of the eye where you want critical sharpness. A good test is if you can actually count tiny hairs or feathers. If instead it's just sort of a smooth, mushed together surface, you might have a sharpness problem. 2, look at reflected detail. Another good check is to look for reflections in the eye. Naturally, not every eye is going to have these, depending on the conditions, the catch lights, etc. However, if there is a reflection in the eye, how much detail is there in that reflection? Can you make out things like trees and branches and maybe even yourself? If so, that's a good sign of a nice sharp image. 3, look for detail in the iris. Many animals have visible capillaries, and some even have a little bit of texture in the iris. Sharp, well-defined capillaries and or texture in the eye is always a good sign of sharpness. However, if those elements are blurry, you may have missed it. In addition, if you have a visible iris with a pupil, look at how well defined the edge of that pupil is against that iris. A nice crisp edge is pretty much a slam dunk. However, if that edge isn't so well defined, well, you may have a problem. Before we get into my 2 favorite sharpness tests, I want to take a few seconds to mention my free email newsletter. Not only will it let you know when I post new videos or workshops or publish new books, starting this year, it will also feature exclusive tips that only newsletter subscribers have access to. Again, 100% free, so stop by the site and sign up today. Number 4, examine any skin around the eye. This is a big one for me. I like to study the detail in the skin around the eye. With mammals, look for crisp texture with well-defined edges. Also, see how well you can distinguish little bumps, nicks, fine hair, that sort of thing. The more distinct the edges of those details are, the sharper the image. For birds, I'm looking for most of those same things, but I'm also examining the skin around the orbital ring. Many birds have little bumps along the edge. If those are distinct and sharply defined enough that you can easily count them, you know you have a winner. Number 5, how well does the image sharpen up? Sometimes we have an image that seems like it's a little bit soft, but in reality, all it needs is a little extra nudge from the sharpening slider. This is very common with teleconverters. Sometimes that little bump in sharpness can really draw out a lot of detail. In addition, how well the image sharpens is a good indicator of overall sharpness. As you add sharpening to an image that's actually in focus, you should see the fine detail ramp up and become increasingly defined as you push the slider over. However, if the image is not in focus, you'll find that when you push the sharpening slider over, it seems like only the noise increases, while the detail in the subject sees little to no increase in definition. Of course, you'll see an increase in noise with a sharp image too. However, subject detail will also increase at a commensurate rate. If it's mostly the noise in the photo that becomes more defined when you increase sharpening, it's a warning sign of a soft photo. In addition, I find that when I add a lot of sharpening to a soft photo, the noise seems to sit on top of the subject, as you can see here. With a sharp photo, the noise seems more like it's part of the subject. Of course, we don't want to over-sharpen to the point that the image looks kind of crunchy, but pushing in some excess sharpness and gauging how well the image responds is a great way to tell if it's actually sharp. Once you're satisfied, pull the slider back to something more reasonable. Here come the arguments. At this point, you may be a little upset with me. Often, when I discuss sharpness, people can actually get a little bit offended, especially if they realize that their favorite photos may not be as sharp as they first thought. I realize a lot of people will argue that an image is more than just the sum of its sharpness, and I tend to agree to an extent, but I also believe that perfect sharpness and getting a great image aren't mutually exclusive ideas either. Also, keep in mind your use for a given image as well. A photo that isn't critically sharp at 100 or 200% might still be just fine for social media use or sharing with your friends. And of course, we all have different criteria for sharpness. In the end, photography is about having a good time, so use this information as a guide, but don't get too caught up in it. Finally, yes, I know there are programs out there that claim to take soft images and make them sharp, but my luck with them has been incredibly limited. In the end, the best results are always to get it right in the camera. If you enjoy these kinds of tips, remember to check out the educational materials at my site as well, and make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.